August 1936. Representatives from 49 nations are gathered in Berlin for one of the most magnificent Olympic Games of all time. Reich Chancellor Adolf Hitler sees the Games as an opportunity to promote his government and ideals of racial supremacy and anti-Semitism, but the event is characterized by a peaceful atmosphere. Europe is still traumatized by the atrocities of the Great War. 18 years are not enough to forget millions dead, so a new conflict is not even foreseeable. Not even Hitler is looking forward to starting a new world war, although he came to power by promising the restoration of a strong German nation and the cancellation of the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles is the outrageous peace treaty that brought the First World War to an end. Germany was forced to accept responsibility for causing all the loss and damage during the war, and therefore to pay an astronomical figure of 132 billion marks as war reparations, that is about 442 billion US dollars in 2020. Not only that, Germany lost territories inhabited by Germans, while its former ally, Austria-Hungary, completely collapsed. New nations arose, obtaining territories from both Austria-Hungary and Germany. Countries like Czechoslovakia and Poland are now home to German minorities, who live in territories that Hitler would like to assimilate into the Third Reich. However, the Führer has no intention of starting a war. Instead, his plan is to take back the lost territories little by little. He is convinced that the world will allow a gradual unification of the German people. On March 1938, Hitler decides that it's time to test the other nations. The German Wehrmacht crosses the border into Austria unopposed by the Austrian military. Instead, the Germans are greeted with great enthusiasm. A plebiscite is held a few days later, and 99% of the Austrians vote for the unification of the two countries. The Archbishop of Vienna, Theodor Initzer, endorses the Anschluss and prays for the new Führer who will protect Austria from communism. The European democracies remain silent. Actually, in the UK, some politicians justify the annexation, comparing it with the unification of England and Scotland. Hitler takes note. The so-called Heim-ins-Reich policy, meaning back home to the Reich, can proceed. The next victim is Czechoslovakia, where the Sudetes region is inhabited by a fair number of Germans. Hitler has always insisted that the Sudetes should be part of the Reich. A regional pro-Nazi party starts conducting terrorist operations with the aim of plunging Czechoslovakia into chaos. The Czech government seeks advice from the two powerful European democracies, namely France and the United Kingdom. Surprisingly, the two superpowers explain that actually ceding the Sudetes to Germany is a reasonable decision, considering the number of German residents. Both France and the UK are terrified by a possible new war, and they know that the Versailles Treaty has been too harsh on Germany. In September 1938, an emergency meeting takes place in Munich, and an agreement is quickly reached on Hitler's terms. The top leaders of Germany, France, Britain and Italy agree on the cession to Germany of the Sudeten German territory of Czechoslovakia. Hitler announces that this represents the last territorial claim in Europe, so the appeasement is seen as a victory by the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, who proudly announces that he and Herr Hitler have ensured peace for Europe.
The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. We, the German Führer and Chancellor, and the British Prime Minister, have had a further meeting today and are agreed in recognizing that the question of Anglo-German relations is of the first importance for the two countries and for Europe. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Not everyone is celebrating, though. A member of Chamberlain's party is convinced that the Munich Agreement is a terrible mistake. Winston Churchill shares his opinion with Chamberlain. "You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor, and you will have war." It must be clear that Hitler doesn't want a war with the UK, but he knows now that he can force its hand without repercussions. In the spring of 1939, civil unrest is reported in Czechoslovakia, and Hitler summons the Czech president to Berlin. The Wehrmacht is ready to march into Czechoslovakia and restore order and peace. If President Emil Hacha rejects, the Luftwaffe is ready to destroy Prague. Hacha suffers a heart attack and later capitulates. The same day, Czechoslovakia is invaded and annexed by Germany. Once again, Hitler is free to expand German borders. Chamberlain begins to have doubts about his agreement with Hitler. The Führer's sign, of which Chamberlain was so proud, seems to have little value. Although Hitler is not trustworthy anymore, no nation intervenes to stop him from expanding the Third Reich even further. Therefore, Hitler starts looking for the next victim, Poland. Poland is a militaristic authoritarian regime that even took a piece of Czechoslovakia when the country collapsed. Hitler often declared that he has no interest in Polish territory. Despite this reassurance, between 1936 and 1939, Poland invested heavily in the newly created Central Industrial Region, preparing for a defensive war with Germany, but most plans assumed fighting would not begin before 1942. Poland too is home to some German people, especially in the free city of Danzig, a semi-autonomous city-state where a local Nazi party pushes for a reunion with Germany. Hitler explains to the world that also the Germans in Poland must be protected, and that they'll not be an oppressed minority anymore. Nazi propaganda starts fabricating stories about the atrocities perpetrated by the Polish against the German minorities. Both the French and British government don't know what to do. The thing is, no one wants a second world war. Democratic governments have been elected also by promising that never again will there be a conflict with the magnitude of the Great War. However, a few months before, in response to Nazi Germany's defiance of the Munich Agreement and occupation of Czechoslovakia, the United Kingdom pledged the support of itself and France to assure Polish independence. At first, the two great powers tried to convince Poland to accept Hitler's demands. Danzig can be given away if this means maintaining peace. Poland doesn't want to surrender to Hitler's arrogance. On September 1st, 1939, the British ambassador in Warsaw receives a telegram from the Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax. It gives him the task of convincing the Polish foreign minister to negotiate with the Germans. It's too late. The ambassador replies that the Luftwaffe is bombing Polish cities, and he can see the explosions from his embassy window. 3 more days will pass before Britain and France declare war on Germany. For 3 days, Hitler believes that he got away with it again. He doesn't want a war either. He has gambled, in the same way he gambled before. This time, though, things went wrong. The Second World War has begun.